Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. I'm your host, Wendy Nystrom. Today's special guest is Danielle Berkowitz-Sklar. She is the National Field Events Coordinator for Moms Clean Air Force and also a member of EcoMadres. So welcome to the show, Danielle.
Hi, Wendy. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. I love the fact that what you do is so important with helping and protecting children. Could you explain really quick what the Moms Clean Air Force does and how it's a part of EcoMadres?
Right. Yes. So I am the National Events Coordinator for Moms Clean Air Force and a core team member of EcoMadres. And EcoMadres is actually the Latino community engagement program of Moms Clean Air Force, a network of over 1.5 million parents and caregivers that are united to protect children's health from air pollution and climate change. And so that's kind of the overview. We are a very community-based team. We have organizers across the country that are either working with or representing impacted communities. And so there's a lot of opportunities to get involved. So I'm super excited about this space to kind of get into that a little bit. Yeah.
You're in a couple of different states as well. I mean, you're a pretty large organization. And when you talk about, when people say environmental justice, social justice, I don't think people purely understand that children are very susceptible to lung damage. And if they're surrounded by pollution, they're going to have lifelong health effects. And you are actively fighting that.
Right. And I think, like your podcast name says it all. There is no environmental issue that also doesn't have severe social problems and disproportionate effects, right? So our motto in EcoMadres and Moms Clean Air Force is actually justice in every breath. And, we're really working at that intersection of environmental and social justice. So, what we mean when we say that is climate and air pollution, which are kind of our two things, affect everyone. Yeah. But because of systemic discrimination in the U.S., families of color, low-income communities have historically been forced into spaces, into neighborhoods where they have to work, live, and play in closer proximity to toxic pollution in areas that are even more susceptible to the impacts of climate change. And, we're talking about physical health effects, but this also has a huge emotional, mental toll on families and affects livelihoods. So there is just a lot at stake and a lot of, compounding effects when we're talking about air pollution and climate change. And we, EcoMadres really tries to, mobilize communities to protect what should be our right to clean air, to a safe environment.
Oh, I could not agree more. I mean, I was on, as timing would have it, folks, I mean, the fact that Danielle and I are doing this today is perfect timing because I was just on a panel with the American Lung Association and I learned some statistics. And one of those was children who have to grow up in a polluted environment, have to deal with that air pollution that they're, and it's an emotional tax as well. They have worse grades. And that will follow them year after year after year until graduation. And you're just trying to stop this in its tracks. And education is important. Getting people to understand is very important. And, redlining, that's a historical thing in the United States, meaning people were not allowed to live in certain neighborhoods based on the color of your skin. Dumbest thing in the world, but it is our history. You are fixing that. You are addressing that. You are bringing attention to that. So with EcoMadres, I mean, you're helping these Latino communities fight for clean air. I mean, it's amazing what you're doing. It's not an easy task.
Right. I mean, and talking about the timing and the statistics, that is so true. And again, it's not just the immediate health impact that you see. Like this carries on throughout people's lives and shows up in many different ways. And when we're talking about social inequality, it's and the neighborhoods that people are being raised in. It just has so many, it's so multifaceted. But going back to kind of those statistics, I mean, in the US, 70% of Latinos live in areas that do not meet federal air quality standards. That means they're literally living in places that are deemed not healthy and not safe. And Latino children are about 60% more likely more at risk than white children to have asthma attacks because of air pollution. And so at EcoMadres, we talk about these statistics, but we also want to put a face and a story to them. And so, we want to drive the message home that there are people behind these statistics, behind these numbers, and they are experiencing real life consequences. So exposure to air pollution can be linked to higher rates of heart disease, asthma, cancer, brain. And you said it, kids that are developing are amongst the most vulnerable. You know, their bodies are developing, and that is being disrupted when they're exposed to toxics and chemicals, and or even like the trauma of living through a climate event, right? So we have to talk about all of those things. I like to talk about examples of communities that we work in, or people who work with 𝐄𝐜𝐸𝐴Dres. And one of our organizers, actually, her name is Mercedes, and she's our Nevada organizer. And she often talks about in opinion pieces in the media, in testimonies with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which is like the U.S. environmental branch, about this. You know, she has lived predominantly in Latino communities, low-income communities her whole life. And every single place she has lived in has suffered from the impacts of environmental injustice to a very serious degree. And right now she's living in a multi-generational home with her 2-year-old daughter, with her mother, and they are located right next to a very busy highway with heavy traffic, with big trucks driving by on the daily. And she sees the change in the air getting dirtier on the daily, with, you know, a buildup of harmful particles that affect her daughter's respiratory system. And she has to actually clean out her air filters at home almost all the time because of this, because it's so visible. And so, you know, this is, again, going back to kind of the overarching theme. It's not just an environmental problem. Oh, pollution is terrible for the environment. It's terrible for climate change, but it's also a matter of human rights. And, you know, something so fundamental like the air that we breathe, that's not something we should have to be fighting for, but here we are. And there is a space for everybody to get involved, regardless of what your capacity is, really, because for working families, for parents, sometimes feel restricted, but we 𝐄𝐜𝐸𝐴Dres really try to make it as accessible as possible.
And breathing clean air should be a human right that everyone should have access to. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer in my opinion, but unfortunately it's not everywhere. And you are currently in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, and Texas. At least those are the ones I found. But you also deal with lawmakers. You have conversations with them. You try to get state and federal laws passed to help these children. Any developments on that end?
Yeah, so our EcoMadres organizers are in the states you mentioned, but we actually have 18 organizers as a whole in Moms Clean Air Force. And whether they're like officially part of our EcoMadres team or not, we do really try to build up that EcoMadres community in Latino areas within those states as well. So even if you didn't hear the state, if you're listening to this and your state wasn't mentioned for EcoMadres, just know that there is still a lot of stuff you can do with us. And we really urge people to reach out, share your stories with us, or if you just want to make a difference, still reach out to us. There's a way to do it. But to answer your question, so it's kind of like a two-sided thing that we do. So the climate, the environmental movement can be very intimidating. And so we try to create that space where, on one hand, the Latino community, which is very diverse in language, in culture, demographically, can come together, learn together with educational tools that we provide that are accessible, digestible, bilingual. And then on the other hand, we really want to amplify Latino voices and stories, right? And so touching a little bit on the lawmaker aspect of our work is EcoMadres wants to ensure that Latino communities are central to decision-making processes, because not only are Latino communities oftentimes bearing the brunt of these crises, but they are also contributing to the problem the least, and on top of it are historically left out of the conversations that eventually impact them the most, right? And so we have longstanding relationships with lawmakers across the country at different levels of government. And we really want to bridge that gap between, that communication between communities and access to lawmakers and the people that are making decisions. So whether it's, leveraging those relationships we have and creating opportunities for local communities to have one-on-one conversations with lawmakers about how their families are suffering health problems, how their children are suffering from health because of environmental and climate issues, or whether it's, as I mentioned earlier, testifying with us. So as the Environmental Protection Agency has public comment periods when they propose some kind of regulation for the country. And there's a period of time for that people can come and testify and give their stories and perspectives. And we do that. We really try to facilitate that process. We host workshops, bilingual workshops, to show people how they can write their testimony and guide them along that process. Because for us, it's not just a matter of, sharing out information and opportunities, but we want to be there every step of the way. And really have authentic relationships, longstanding, continuous conversations with communities. So we will help you through all these processes. Or just to give another example, we have, opportunities for you to raise your voice through speaking opportunities at high visibility events or in media pieces. And so those are examples of the work that we do to try to bridge that gap with communities and lawmakers. Yeah.
Sometimes it is very important for lawmakers to understand what's happening in communities, because sometimes it's not painfully obvious. It should be, but I guess they're busy. But one of the things to really hone in on with the pollution aspect, we're not just talking about children or families living near a smokestack in a industrial area. If you live near a busy highway or a freeway, you have obviously trucks going back and forth. There's smoke coming out of their diesel, et cetera. It's also tire pollution. Most people don't realize that, yes, we all are aware that our tires will erode as we use them. No one really thinks about what happens. So what happens is, with the traction of the tire hitting the pavement, it's eroding off as small, fine particulate matter. That becomes airborne and that gets breathed into your lungs. Tires are not entirely rubber. This is not a natural substance. There's a lot of stuff in tires. So we need to be very proactive. Not only would it be great to have another material that's not so harmful. There is a company called 𝐄𝐜𝐸 in England that's working on that. They've actually got a tire that's really durable anyway. But just to make it cleaner for anyone living out there, that they don't have to deal with that. That's what, it's not just resolving a problem. Let's stop it before it starts.
Right. And you said it. And I love the scientific perspective that you bring. And I know that you're all about making information accessible and understandable. So it's always much appreciated. Right. But that's actually, that's part of some of the issues that we work with. And I mentioned Mercedes, our organizer, who lives near a busy highway, and it's not just the tailpipe pollution, right? It's many aspects of it. And so it's so important, even if you're not a scientist, to get into those rooms where people will be listening to you and tell the stories of how this pollution is translating into truly burdens of everyday life burdens for people in health and in many other aspects.
I'd like to envelop everything we've talked about. You have 4 goals on your website. And I did write them down because I did not want to misspeak. Could we go through I'll read them off, and then if you could just respond to explaining what that means so the viewers can understand. Your first one says, provide reliable and culturally appropriate information and educational resources to increase understanding of the health effects of air pollution and climate change.
Yeah, so that's really at the core of what we're trying to do. Again, we work within the Latino community in the US, but the Latino community is also extremely diverse. Latinos living in different places might be dealing with different kinds of challenges. And so what we want to do is make sure that we are coming to people with information that is relevant to them, that is, it's not only, translated, but it's also offering enough information for them to then take action, right? And so that's, we do this through many different ways, whether it's meeting communities where they are at community events and having those one-on-one conversations with members of the community, or hosting online webinars to talk about these things, because sometimes people can't make it in person, and that's just another accessibility barrier, right? And so that is really key to us, is create that space where we can disseminate information, but also have conversations and talk to each other, where we can also learn from communities. It's not a one-sided thing. And so I think that's kind of really at the core of 𝐄𝐜𝐸𝐴Des.
I love it. Your second goal, amplify Latino, Latina voices through storytelling, love that, and empower our members to be part of the decision-making process through public participation during comment periods and meetings with elected officials. I love the storytelling part. That's great.
Right. I mean, the storytelling part, I think really all these goals are very related and interconnected, but the storytelling part is really key, because oftentimes there will be this big, press event about a certain regulation that we're celebrating that the government just passed, right? And there won't be a speaker that is giving that community perspective, or, the perspective of someone who's truly disproportionately impacted by what we're talking about. It's that this will actually play out and have a very positive impact on real life people. So that's why it's so important to us, again, that putting that face and the story to the policies, to the facts and statistics that we're talking about.
Makes it real. It brings
it makes it real.
Yeah. Your third one, engage, make sure I'm getting the right one, engage decision makers at local, very important, state and federal levels to advocate for just and equitable climate change solutions. Love the solutions, not just bringing up problems, but solutions, environmental justice, and health equity.
Right. So we work with levels, with government at all levels. And, we work with with the school boards, with mayors, representatives, you name it. We really want to open the doors to everyone and be able to have those conversations with people. And really, at the end of the day, that's what's really so special about Moms Clean Air Force and 𝐄𝐜𝐸𝐴Des, is that whether you're a parent or not, it's kind of that love that comes with, wanting to protect the younger generations that are vulnerable, that have done nothing to contribute to this crisis. And really talking about that and how children are being impacted day to day is very powerful. And when we're talking about solutions, right? So for example, I think this might tie into another one of the goals, but Biden just passed historic climate investments, and through a legislation called the Inflation Reduction Act. And part of that is, one of those funding opportunities is electric school bus grants. And so what we do, just to give a concrete example, is we want to make sure that these historic climate investments are actually being used by the people that need it the most. That people that are being disproportionately impacted know about these, first of all, know about them. Like, they can be there. That's great. And it is a huge step, but communities need to know that that's a possibility. And beyond that, we want to work with them throughout that grant application process, right? It's, it's not just raising awareness about an opportunity. It's being there to make sure that this is truly taken advantage of by Latino communities. So we work with school districts with high Latino populations to help them throughout that process, because at the end of the day, kids deserve a clean ride to school, but electric school buses also reduce pollution exposure for school staff, for bus drivers, for the families and communities as a whole. So this is, these are little things that can make an impact. And we want to make sure that no one is left behind when we're talking about solutions, when we're talking about that shift to a just and sustainable future, and which is what we're all working for. We need to make sure that everybody is a part of that future that we're talking about, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there should absolutely be no exceptions. Everyone across the board, they're children. I mean, we've got to look out for them. It's that simple.
Right.
And then your last one, which I actually love this one, enhance language access and funding opportunities to our communities through education and outreach across the country. Just so everybody understands, not everyone speaks English. There are multiple, not everyone speaks Spanish either. There's going to be like a multitude of languages involved here. So we need to encompass everyone.
We do. And that, yes. So I did mention a few times, like we try to get all the information translated. But beyond that, something that's very central to like the Latino community is being able to have those authentic engagements with people. And so maybe that's part of it too, which it is it's not just providing the information, it's actually making yourself available to have conversations, to explain what this means in a local context, right? But I guess this is a great opportunity to mention something else. Our 𝐄𝐜𝐸𝐴Dres organizer in Iowa, she created a program called 𝐄𝐜𝐸_Música, so eco music. And I think this is just a really great way to show how creative you can get in reaching communities, and how she writes music about raising awareness, not only about certain environmental issues that affect Latino communities, but in a way that really speaks to that like caregiving, community centered culture that we see within the Latino community. And it's just such an effective way of bringing people together, raising awareness, empowering people to take action in a way that's also fun, and a way that is enjoyable and really brings people together, no matter where your roots are, but you identify with it. And I think that really does speak to the accessibility, not just through language, but through culture.
Me personally, there's nothing that brings me greater happiness than helping someone be heard. A lot of times people are suppressed or repressed and told, be quiet, know your place. And I personally do everything I can to tell other women, other people, be loud. Just be loud, be heard. If you have an opinion, please share it with us. People don't have to agree with you. But with what you're doing, yes, they have to agree with you with what you're doing. But what is the best way for someone to get in touch with you, or maybe even join 𝐄𝐜𝐸𝐴Dres or Women for Clean Air, or Moms for Clean Air? What's the best way for them to find you?
I would say start with social media. I don't know if I can maybe put our handles in
I'll put that in. Yeah.
All right. Well, follow us on social media, follow our webpage. There's a lot of resources there. And again, depending on your capacity to get involved, there is still a space for you, even if that's literally just following us and staying informed on issues that might be affecting your community, and to a greater extent than others, right? So I would say do that. You can sign our petitions. We always have active petitions on our website, and
cool.
you can opt to receive updates from us, and that is another way. If you can indicate what state you're in, and we will be sending you information and of opportunities to get involved. And then just reach out to us. We have our email, our social media platforms. Again, we want to hear your stories. We want to hear why you want to get involved, if you want to get involved, and whether that's testifying with us. We would love to connect. So I would say that I think one of our big events coming up is we have one on February 8th. So I'll also mention that it's an event online that we'll be talking with the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Regan, amongst doctors, other public health experts working in the climate space, on the unique vulnerabilities of babies, children, teens. And that's, if you're new to this, that's a great kind of way to introduce you to this, to like what that link means between health, climate, and air pollution. So yeah.
That's fantastic. And that's on February 8th?
That's on February 8th.
Fantastic. No, guys, please check that out. It's online as well, so anyone can attend. So thank you, Danielle. 𝐄𝐜𝐸𝐴Dres sounds like a wonderful organization, and it makes absolute sense what you're doing. Clean air for everyone. You should just be able to breathe. Everyone should be able to just have access to clean air. This is not difficult. Mm-hmm. So please check them out. Please find them online. Danielle, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Likewise.
Bye-bye. See you next time.